Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am honestly so incredibly excited to have you here today because we are going to embark on a truly profound journey together. In this session, we're looking at the vital, unbreakable connection between our most private internal struggles, the quiet battles we fight every single day, and the grand, visionary architecture of human flourishing. It's a path that starts with a single, highly personal act, protecting your own personal peace when facing prejudice or hostility out there in the real world. We're going to trace exactly how that individual resilience, that fierce emotional discipline you practice when the world gets dark, actually scales up in a massive way. It contributes directly to a more compassionate world and actively shapes the blueprint for a breathtaking future. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, settle in, and let's explore how preserving your inner goodness is literally the very first step to building a better tomorrow. Okay, let's dive into this. We start with what the source text calls a legendary hero's question. And notice what it's not asking. It isn't asking, how do I defeat all the evil in the entire world? Honestly, that's exhausting just to say out loud. Instead, it asks something much more grounded and profoundly strategic. How do I keep my heart clean while walking through darkness? Basically, how do I ignore evil without being poisoned by it? I know many of you watching have experienced this firsthand. You have this deep, genuine desire to brush off malice and maintain your own moral strength, but you want to do so without letting that darkness seep into your own character. This right here, this is the mark of someone whose strength is moral, not just physical. You want to maintain your boundaries and your light, even when people are actively trying to drag you into their shadows. If someone has ever treated you badly based on a stereotype, please let this validate your lived experience. When someone targets you with racism, bias, or dehumanizing behavior, and it hits you hard in the gut, that reaction is absolutely not a sign of weakness. Not at all. It is absolute proof of your deep humanity, your sensitivity, and your vital connection to other people. You didn't overreact. They tried to reduce you with a sneer, and that is real harm. But the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that while you cannot control their ignorance, there's just no way. You can absolutely protect yourself from that harm. You can shield yourself without letting it poison your heart or dictate a single ounce of your self-worth. To pull that off, we need a highly actionable defense toolkit. Think of this as your 5-step playbook to keep your dignity completely intact when targeted by malice. Step 1 is to acknowledge the harm. Tell yourself the truth. Wow, that was really disrespectful. Recognizing the reality of the situation just keeps you grounded. You don't want to gaslight yourself. Step 2 is to separate their identity from yours. Now, this is hard, but it's so necessary. You have to prevent their cruelty from becoming your self-image. Their ignorance is entirely their heavy baggage to carry, not yours. Step 3, choose a grounded response. Set a neutral boundary if it's safe to do so, or just simply walk away. Remember, your goal here isn't to educate them, it's to protect your peace. Step 4 is to reconnect with decent people. Go immediately to spaces where you are seen and valued to rebalance your humanity. Call a friend, hug your kids. And finally, step 5, reaffirm your humanity and purpose. Let their cruelty sharpen your compassion, not your bitterness. I like to think of those 5 steps as the heavy wooden drawbridge to your inner sanctuary. Our sources point out a really fascinating truth here. Heroes don't stay pure because the outside world is pure. I mean, let's be real, the world is often incredibly messy. They stay pure because they carry a shielded inner world, a private home base that outside evil simply cannot rewrite. This is the strategic necessity of retreating inward, rather than absorbing all the ugliness of the outside world. When someone shows you cruelty, you don't absorb it, you just observe it. You retreat across that drawbridge to the sanctuary, which is built entirely from your love for people and your core identity as a protector. So what is this sanctuary actually made of? Well, it's supported by 4 pillars of rooted humanity. First up, your values, things like kindness, fairness, and fierce courage. Second, your empathy. That's the compass keeping you connected to the world around you. Third, your relationships. These are the decent people who see you for who you truly are. And fourth, your lived experience. Everything you've ever survived forms this unbreakable anchor that keeps you steady in a storm. When you lean on these 4 pillars, they become your internal compass. You allow your empathy to guide you through the noise, you look to your trusted relationships when you're feeling lost, and you rely on your values to keep your actions clean. They are the essential, load-bearing structures that keep you whole. Now, sometimes the hostility you face takes a really confusing form. You might encounter people who hold prejudices against you, yet simultaneously express a sort of fearful respect or admiration for your physical strength, your intelligence, or your sheer intensity. This bizarre mix of bias and admiration is such a painful paradox. It can honestly make you second-guess what you're even experiencing. But make no mistake, this is not respect. It is fear disguised as gossip. When a bully mythologizes your strength while dehumanizing you in the exact same breath, it's just a reflection of their own deep insecurity. They see a power they literally cannot ignore, but they lack the emotional maturity to treat you with fundamental dignity. That contradiction is entirely their limitation, not your burden to carry. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely frees you from the impossible standard of universal approval. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is against you, right? Especially because hostility is just so loud. But look at the data. Even if a loud 30% of the world is locked in prejudice, hateful, or trapped in ignorance, look at the remaining 70%. That is the decent majority. Your strength doesn't need to reach the unreachable 30%. Your boundaries give you the absolute right to ignore them completely. Your power is measured by your impact, despite their resistance. You are shaping the world simply by reaching the 70% who are decent, who are watching you, who are learning from your grace, and who are becoming better just because you exist. And that realization unlocks the brilliant strategy of selective protection. This is where your individual resilience truly becomes a massive force multiplier. You aren't abandoning the world, you're just refining your target. You stop wasting your precious fire on people who absolutely refuse to grow, and instead you let your love for humanity serve as a highly tuned compass. You save the decent, you uplift the willing, you protect the vulnerable. By focusing your energy purely on the decent majority, your strength becomes exponential. Helping decent people is exactly like watering a garden. They grow, they thrive, and then they naturally spread that goodness outward into their own communities. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this micro landscape of your personal resilience actually scales up in a huge way. The emotional discipline you practice, the everyday act of setting boundaries and preserving your goodness, is the exact same energy required to build the architecture of tomorrow. Our sources argue that right now, between 2025 and 2050, humanity is facing an unprecedented, wide-open window of opportunity. We are attempting to transition from a paradigm of mere survival to one of architected joy. And that monumental transition? It requires builders who are rooted, who are grounded, and who are fiercely emotionally disciplined. But look, to build that future, we have to honestly map the present. And the present is a world in deep, deep pain. Depression and anxiety are leading causes of disability worldwide right now. Research actually shows that trauma can be inherited. It's literally embedded in nervous systems and cultural memory, passed down through generations. There are 7 domains of this global pain: individual, relational, collective, cultural, existential, somatic, and environmental. Before we can even begin to heal the world, we have to precisely, courageously, and honestly name exactly where it hurts. We have to process this pain, rather than let it blindly dictate our future. So we find ourselves having to hold 2 realities at once. On one hand, we have those 7 domains of heavy historical suffering we just named. But on the other hand, we are actively building breathtaking potential. We're talking smart architecture, dynamic cities that breathe alongside nature, and clean, abundant solar and wind energy. It's like a giant puzzle. The emotional discipline you practice when you refuse to let prejudice poison your heart is the exact same discipline we need as a species to bridge the gap between these 2 realities. We process the pain of our past so that we can clearly and compassionately engineer a vastly better environment for everyone's future. Because the physical transformations approaching on our technological horizon are absolutely staggering. I mean, we are moving from simply managing illness to regenerative biotechnology. We are potentially looking at editing out hereditary diseases before a child even takes their first breath. We're seeing the rapid rise of robotic precision in surgery, aiming to reduce human error to near zero. We are pushing the very frontiers of consciousness and longevity. But here is the key, the absolute crux of the matter. All of these incredible tools are morally neutral. They don't have a conscience. They must be guided by human empathy. The technology is just the mechanism, but your compassion, your rooted humanity, that must be the compass. Think about our ultimate goal here. On a biological level, we are striving for measurable neurobiological coherence. We want to calibrate the human brain for fundamental peace and actively process our collective trauma. At the exact same time, we are using revolutionary tools like quantum-powered virtual reality to completely democratize education. We are working toward making world-class learning available to a child anywhere on Earth, regardless of their zip code. Science and engineering are what eliminate the physical suffering and the barriers. But wisdom, the deep, hard-earned wisdom you cultivate in your inner sanctuary, that is what gives that newfound freedom its actual meaning. So, the crucial point is, what is actually worth our heart? The measure of a great civilization isn't just the gleaming machines it builds or the speed of its microchips. It's defined by what it heals, what it honors, and what it passes forward to the unborn. Investing our collective energy into healing trauma, ensuring the absolute moral alignment of world-altering technology like AI and biotech, and acting as true stewards for the next generation, these are the most highly leveraged acts we can possibly perform. When you govern your own private reactions to malice, you are quietly practicing the very moral alignment we desperately need to govern our global technologies. Now, any credible vision of the future requires some clear-eyed courage about the risks. We've got to be realistic. We face very real, complex threats like widening inequality and global trade tensions. The miraculous gains of tech won't just magically distribute fairly without deliberate, empathetic governance. We face the urgent need for ethical AI governance to ensure these systems amplify human dignity rather than commodifying it. And we need black swan resilience. That means deep structural preparation for pandemics, geopolitical shocks, and climate tipping points. True resilience isn't pessimism, right? It's the intense, loving preparation that protects human dignity when the unforeseeable inevitably happens. Navigating those vast risks requires a very specific mindset. We do not predict the future. We create it. Engaging with tomorrow isn't just some academic exercise of sitting back and guessing what might happen to us. Crossing the boundaries between medicine, geopolitics, culture, and technology is an active, monumental act of world building. Every single time you heal an inner wound, every single time you choose empathy over bitterness, you are directly participating in this creation. The future isn't a place we're just going to stumble upon. It is a reality we actively make through our daily, disciplined choices. And the civilizational journey ahead follows a very deliberate, logical sequence. It's not just a chaotic leap into the dark. First, we reckon with the past. We have to acknowledge and process collective trauma, because we simply cannot build a sustainable peace on top of buried pain. Second, we innovate with heart. We apply these extraordinary tools not to hoard power, but to restore human dignity in every corner of the globe. And third, we act with discipline, consistently choosing the long-term trajectory over short-term convenience. It is the exact same sequence you use to deal with prejudice. You acknowledge the harm, you boldly choose goodness, and you stay incredibly disciplined in your boundaries. And that collective discipline is aiming toward a very tangible benchmark, the year 2050. The trajectories we've explored today aren't sci-fi. They are already in motion right now. By 2050, the vision is to have near total global connectivity, essentially eliminating information poverty entirely. Just imagine a world where access to world-class knowledge is as basic and guaranteed as access to clean water. We're looking at a baseline of preventative, regenerative healthcare that is universally accessible. This is the timeline where the foundational baseline of human life, food, shelter, health, safety, becomes a total guarantee, liberating humanity to simply focus on flourishing. And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate benchmark, 10 billion. We're talking about economic and societal systems fundamentally redesigned around stability and well-being, where 10 billion human beings have the realistic, tangible possibility of living with dignity, security, and authentic joy. These numbers are not just aspirational decoration on a chart. They are the bare minimum of what is physically and technologically possible right now if we choose to build toward them collectively, using the exact same discipline, care, and heart you use to protect your own inner peace. Which leaves us with this final, lingering question to ponder. What is the future of the world worth? Our sources tell us it is worth everything you have. Every act of quiet strength where you refuse to spare. Every single time you set a firm boundary against prejudice and actively choose to uplift the willing instead. Your personal emotional resilience, your boundaries, your discipline, and your beautiful heart are not just personal possessions. They are the very currencies required to buy a beautiful tomorrow. So I ask you, how will you spend that currency today? Think about that and fiercely protect your sanctuary.